In this guide, why asymmetric cryptography needs a trust anchor, how the certificate chain from root CA to identity certificate is built and verified, what X509 extensions control path length and key usage, and how certificate revocation works in practice. Identity Expert, powering you to be an expert in identity. Today we're covering public key infrastructure, PKI, the trust framework that makes secure communication on the internet possible. Every time your browser shows a padlock icon, PKI is working. Every time you validate a JWT signature, PKI is working. Every time software is installed and your operating system checks a code signing certificate, PKI is working. At its core, PKI solves the key distribution problem. How can two parties who have never met securely verify each other's identity using cryptographic keys? The answer is a chain of trust. A certificate authority, a CA, vouches for the binding between a public key and an identity by digitally signing a certificate. Your browser trusts the CA and therefore trusts the certificate. But here's what makes PKI interesting and dangerous. The entire system rests on trusting a relatively small number of root CAs. Fewer than 150 root CAs are trusted by major browsers. If even one is compromised, an attacker can issue certificates for any domain in the world. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how X509 certificates work, how the chain of trust is validated, how revocation works, and what post-quantum cryptography means for PKI. Think of PKI like a government passport system. A passport is a document that a trusted authority, a government, has signed, binding your photograph and identity information together. When a border agent checks your passport, they're not verifying you personally, they're verifying that the document was issued and signed by a trusted government. If they trust the issuing government, they trust the passport. PKI works the same way. A certificate authority is the government. A digital certificate is the passport, a document that binds a public key to an identity signed by the CA. When your browser receives a certificate from a web server, it doesn't verify the server directly. It checks whether the certificate was signed by a CA it trusts. If yes, it trusts the identity claim in the certificate, and therefore the public key. And just like governments have a hierarchy, local authorities issue passports under the authority of a central government. CAs have a hierarchy. Intermediate CAs issue certificates under the authority of root CAs. This chain of trust is what makes scalable identity verification possible without requiring every participant to know every other participant in advance. The fundamental problem PKI solves is this. If Alice wants to send an encrypted message to Bob, she needs Bob's public key. But how does she know the key she received actually belongs to Bob and not to an attacker performing a man-in-the-middle attack? Without a trusted third party to verify the binding between Bob's identity and his public key, Alice has no way to know. She could receive a public key from an attacker claiming to be Bob, encrypt her message, and the attacker could read it. This is the key distribution problem, getting the right key to the right party without trusting the channel. PKI solves it with a certificate authority. The CA verifies Bob's identity out of band through documentation, domain validation, or extended validation checks, and then signs a certificate that binds Bob's identity to his public key. Alice's browser comes preloaded with the CA's public key as a trust anchor. When Alice receives Bob's certificate, she verifies the CA's signature. If valid, she knows the public key genuinely belongs to Bob. The CA has vouched for the binding. The key distribution problem is solved. PKI has four core components. First, key pairs. Every entity generates an asymmetric key pair, a public key that can be shared freely and a private key that is never disclosed. RSA and ECDSA are the dominant algorithms. Second, certificate signing requests. When an entity wants a certificate, it generates a CSR, a signed document containing its public key and identity information, and submits it to a CA. Third, the CA performs identity verification. For a domain-validated certificate, this might be automated. The CA checks that you control the domain by serving a challenge token. For extended validation, it involves manual review of organizational documents. Once verified, the CA signs the certificate with its own private key. The resulting X509 certificate contains the subject's identity, their public key, the CA's identity, a serial number, and a validity period. Fourth, certificate chain validation. When a relying party, a browser, an API client, receives a certificate, it validates the entire chain. It checks the CA's signature on the certificate using the CA's public key. If the CA is an intermediate, it validates the intermediate certificate up to a root. At the root, it checks whether the root CA is in the trust store, the set of preloaded root CAs the system trusts. Every step in the chain must be valid. Let's look at the actual structure of an X509 certificate and a TLS handshake. An X509 version 3 certificate, as defined in RFC 5280, contains three top-level sections. The TBS certificate, the to-be-signed certificate data, the signature algorithm, and the signature value. The TBS certificate contains a version field, a serial number unique to the CA, the signature algorithm identifier, the issuer distinguished name, the CA's identity, the validity period with not before and not after timestamps, the subject distinguished name, the holder's identity, and the subject public key info field containing the algorithm and the actual public key. In a TLS 1.3 handshake, the server sends its certificate in the certificate message. The client validates the chain, extracts the server's public key, and uses it to verify the server's digital signature in the certificate verify message. The actual session keys are established through an ephemeral Diffie-Hellman exchange. The certificate only authenticates the server's identity. It does not directly encrypt the session. This separation, identity authentication via certificates, session encryption via key exchange, is what gives TLS its forward secrecy. The biggest operational challenge in PKI is revocation. What happens when a private key is compromised before the certificate expires? There are two mechanisms. Certificate revocation lists, CRLs, are signed lists of revoked serial numbers published by the CA. Clients download and cache them. The problem? CRLs can be megabytes in size and are checked at best every few days, leaving a window where a compromised certificate is still trusted. The Online Certificate Status Protocol, OCSP, defined in RFC 6960, allows real-time per-certificate revocation checks. The client sends the certificate's serial number to the CA's OCSP responder. The responder returns a signed status. But OCSP has a privacy problem. The CA can see which certificates you're validating. OCSP stapling solves this. The server fetches and caches the OCSP response and staples it in the TLS handshake, so the client doesn't need to contact the CA at all. Beyond revocation, the major threats are rogue CA compromise and misissuance. In 2011, the DigiNotar CA was compromised. Attackers issued fraudulent Google certificates used to intercept Iranian citizens' communications. Certificate transparency, a public append-only log of all issued certificates, was created in response. Browsers now require certificates to appear in the CT log before trusting them. As of 2026, PKI faces its most significant architectural challenge since its creation: post-quantum cryptography. The RSA and ECDSA algorithms that underpin most of today's PKI are vulnerable to Shor's algorithm on a sufficiently powerful quantum computer. NIST finalized its first post-quantum cryptographic standards in 2024. MLKEM, Module Lattice Key Encapsulation Mechanism, for key exchange, and MLDSA, Module Lattice Digital Signature Algorithm, for digital signatures. These are the algorithms that will replace RSA and ECDSA in X509 certificates. The migration is complex. Every certificate in every PKI hierarchy must be reissued with post-quantum algorithms, and every relying party must support the new algorithms before the old ones can be retired. NIST SB 800-208 and the CISA post-quantum migration guidance define the timeline. For identity systems specifically, JWT libraries and TLS implementations need PQ-ready versions, work that is actively underway across the major open-source ecosystems. The trajectory is clear. PKI is not going away, but the cryptographic algorithms inside it are about to be completely replaced. Start your PQ migration inventory now. All primary sources cited in today's guide are listed on screen. You'll find direct links to the RFCs and specifications in the video description below. If this breakdown helped you understand the topic better, please subscribe to Identity Expert. We publish a new protocol deep dive every week. Thanks for watching. If there's a specific identity standard, authentication flow, or security protocol you'd like us to cover next, drop it in the comments below. We build our content based on what the community asks for. Subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss an episode.